what were some of your favorite matches, or what have been, since you still are doing it, what have been some of your favorite matches to
My my
referee?
favorite matches are always the ones that are technically nice, technically well developed, and the psychology means something. It's not always the main events, not always the high dollar matches. I was very fortunate that pretty early on I was able to kind of determine which matches I wanted to work, and the ones that I didn't want to work. And a lot of times they wanted me to be in the main events anyway. But anytime I got to work with the technicians, those were the times when I enjoyed it the most. And sometimes it wasn't always the feature matches. It was but I've been in so many thousands and thousands, and some of them are very memorable. Some of them, when people ask me those questions, it's hard to say, oh, this match was my favorite or that one. There were some in Japan that were just incredible that I enjoyed. And then there's some over here that working with the great workers, the guys that really understood how to develop matches. That was my joy.
Yeah, I mean, you've been a part of several iconic matches over the years, working with so many legends, and I got to see the Iron Claw that you were a part of, and that had to have been a fun experience. The
Incredible,
story, yeah,
incredible.
the story that they were telling with the Von Erichs, man, it was just so tragic, but also uplifting when you see um, Kevin Von Erich really kind of come into his own and be with his family and proud of the legacy that he helped build, and
And that's the thing I try to tell people that so many wrestling fans, even before the movie was out, the rumors were out there about this and that, and the cast was announced and all of that. People started criticizing this and criticizing that. I've tried to tell people, listen, this is a movie. It's not a documentary. It's a movie based on fact and on true stories, but it's still a movie, and it's 2 hours and so many minutes long, and you're not going to be able to get every detail in that and develop every character and that was involved in world class and the Von Erich family in a little over 2 hours. It's just not going to happen.
it's
And
impossible.
yeah, it's impossible to do that. And the truth is this story in particular is about Kevin, and it's a business which is unique in itself just because of what it is. And a father who was a dominant person in that business and very well known, one of the biggest draws in the business over a couple of decades. And it's about Kevin's story about coming into it and dealing with that, and also dealing with the fact that he's the older brother left, and David, really was the first one to get the big break. They were pushing him to be a world champion. And then when David died, it kind of skipped over Kevin again and went to Kerry. And so he was dealing with that as well, but because, you would think the older brother is going to be the guy that's going to be the next in line, but that's not how it worked. And I'm sure there were well, I know there were a lot of psychological things going on there with Kevin, that dealing with that situation, and he dealt with it well. But that's what the movie's about. That, and then of course all the tragedies, and dealing with all of that, and also dealing with developing a relationship with Pam, and building a family, which none of that stuff was fully developed because it couldn't be. There's not enough time.
No,
Um, and a lot of things were changed. I mean, there's some timelines in the movie that aren't the way it happened, and a couple of things that the movie showed happening didn't happen exactly that way. But it was done that way in order to be able to tell Kevin's story, and that's what it's about. And I try to tell people, if you will go to see the movie, go to see it from that point of view, and don't try to nitpick it for not being a documentary.
did you feel like the movie stayed true to the Von Erich story?
It did in a lot of respects. It did in the fact that I know how close all those brothers were, and they really loved each other. That family is close, and that I think that was the big point. Kevin told Sean Durkin at some point after Sean had already written the script and then started working on it and that kind of thing. He did talk to Kevin, and Kevin told him, the main thing I want to see is that the relationship with my brothers is the real thing, and I think Sean made a real effort of trying to show that those guys really loved each other, and they did. That's exactly how they were, and they were a close knit family. All of them were, and it kind of fell apart, of course, with all the tragedies and then later Doris leaving, Fritz and Doris getting a divorce and that kind of thing. That's another tragedy, that really didn't show up in the movie, but it's part of the family story, but yeah, I think that was very true to real life. There were other people involved in the family. I mean, Kevin had two girls before he had those two boys. They weren't even in the movie, which they understand why. They were told why, and they understand that just one of those things they couldn't. The story had to be told this way. Um, David was married at one time and had a child, and that child passed away like 2 or 3 months old. That wasn't in there either. And it would have been that time. You're talking about running down a bunch of rat holes there that you just can't get into one in a 2-hour movie. Carrie had two girls, and knew them both well, and still do, and that wasn't part of the story. But that's just that's what you have to do when you make a movie, and but the family dynamic I think was very very honest in there in the movie, and I think it told that story that they were close, they loved each other, the struggles in the business, trying to come into it as a young guy and taking your lumps and learning, like the match with Harley, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
That was very, very realistic. A lot of experienced guys that were around during those days. They would take advantage of young guys like that, and especially guys they knew were going to be kind of pushed along pretty soon. But at the same time, a lot of those guys loved working with the Von Erich boys because they knew that's where the money was going to be. So, there were a lot of things in the wrestling side of the story that was very real too, and we tried to make the wrestling scenes as realistic as possible. And I think we did. I think we nailed it on that. Chavo Guerrero was incredible in putting those
Oh,
together.
for sure.
And we, he allowed me to help, as far as telling these guys that this guy would do this way and this guy would do this that way. But, the guys that I'd worked with in the ring, I knew them,
Hmm.
and I think we got it right on the wrestling part. So yeah, the movie had a lot of accuracy in that regard. As long as you don't try to make it historically perfect, and I think he nailed all the main things anyway.
And the cast seemed like they were having fun too. They really got into it.
They were all incredible to work with. And I didn't get to work with all the cast because uh, the a lot of the family scenes and stuff, like with Kevin and Pam and with Doris and that kind of thing, we were involved in. We were involved in the things that had to do with wrestling, but all those guys that were involved in that were just incredible to work with, and none of them had that star attitude at all. They were all very willing to listen and do what we had asked them to do, or at least showed them how to do, and that kind of thing. And they did all the wrestling scenes. I mean, we had guys that were showing them how to do these things. And of course, Chavo had worked with them for several months before and taught them some basic things. But when it came down to shooting the actual scenes you see in the movie, those are the actors doing them, and they did them all the way through.